All right. Carolyn, do you want to get yourself where you want to be? Do you want, are you going to have Beth with you to start? Okay. So let's see, Laura, can you hear us all right?
I can, yes.
Then can you, so Carolyn, would you say a word or two?
I'm right here.
Not well.
Can you, you're gonna have to move in.
How about right here?
Better, much better, yes.
Okay,
Better.
good. Thank you.
Pardon me?
There's just a few other people that we'd like to get seated. And we can start.
Right. We're gonna make everybody be seated. We're really putting down the law here. All right.
You really want this? What am I gonna do?
So we are recording this so that people who aren't here can hear Carolyn's talk. And are you recording it, Laura?
I am, we are already recording, yes.
We're recording. All right, so I'm sorry this might be in the way. Is it blocking anybody's view?
It's okay because it's in the center. I think it is.
Okay.
Okay, we are here to celebrate you, Carolyn, and for bringing this beautiful, beautiful, vibrant, and passionate work to St. Mark's for us all to enjoy. And one of the things I'm looking forward to the most.
Speak up. You're gonna have to have your voice a little bit louder.
Okay.
Use your big outdoor voice. Thank you.
I will do my best. Well, I think what's so amazing about your work is your compelling process and you're so conceptual. And I think the meaning behind each painting has its own story that it's like a journal in painted format. And whether it's in your Sons of the Body of God, where you're dealing with the grief of gun violence, or in the Kitchen Madonna that speaks to history and healing. And each piece embodies truth and strength and humility and grace. And we just want to thank you so much for sharing this with us. And thank you. Thank you.
I have not planned anything to say, but I will say this. I walk on a regular basis, actually with both of these women at different times. And one of the things that I've talked about with Carolyn is about the work that she's creating. And so I get to hear some about the process. And I love hearing about how Carolyn's process works. So one of the things you may be interested in, I don't know how deeply she's going to get into her process here, but we have, Carolyn did an adult forum here at St. Mark's. I'm trying to remember when that was it last summer?
Last year.
And she really explained a lot of this work and what is under it, because there are layers and layers under many of these paintings as they grew from her. And so I would encourage you to even look that up on YouTube for that Zoom. It's on YouTube, the Zoom adult forum at St. Mark's with Carolyn Faber. And I think you'll enjoy that as well. And I'm so glad that you all came tonight. And we're so happy to celebrate you and the work that you've done. And I'm just so amazed at this accomplishment because, you know, Carolyn's working on an associate's degree in art at College of DuPage, even though she has a PhD and a couple master's degrees. And so it shows you it's never too late to continue learning. Learning and growing is just an important and essential part of our lives. So thank you, Carolyn.
Well, Beth and Joyce explained everything, so I'm done. I'm just so grateful for the work that you, Beth, and Joyce, and Cecilia, who's what George is known as Cecilia's husband, but George is our rector. Cecilia is not able to be here, but they so supported me in getting these pieces on the wall. So before I thank people, I had a speechwriter say, don't spend all your time thanking people, but I could spend all my time thanking people because almost every single one of you that is here has been a really integral part of my being able to give over to being an artist and letting go of my other works. But what was I going to say? I forgot, but I remember, at any rate, I lost my note cards. I had just a few things written down. So I do know, I do want to talk about how I got here to be an artist, to giving over to that. And I want to talk about my process. And I want to spend a little time also talking about why I chose the title for the show that I did, The Ongoing Birthing of Spirit. I knew that I wanted to be an artist from the time that I was 7 years old. And I was sitting at the kitchen table. My sister Anita was there too. I was 7, you were probably 4.5. And my mom was drawing these paper dolls by hand and the clothes that fit on them for us. And I remember that, and I watched her, and I wanted to do that for myself. And I waited 57 years to claim that. When I was 64 is when I finally closed my therapy practice and said, I'm going to claim myself as an artist, and really started to work seriously at being a painter. Before that, I spent, I would dabble, I would take a step in, and then, shame, fear, doubt, all of that stuff, or people's input would, say no, and I'd step back out. Thankfully, I did work that I liked, so, that wasn't an issue, like I was trying to get out of a really bad job, because it was a wonderful work. But I couldn't say yes to being the artist that I really wanted to be. And when I was, so I want to talk about some of these pieces, and some of them are kind of part of my story. The very top piece, the very first piece up here, is really integral to my story of being able to finally become an artist. When I was in junior high and high school, I won awards for art. So, I had a little bit of some talent, or at least some good pieces came out, and I won some awards. And then in senior in high school, I was part of a gifted artist program at Northern Illinois University. And when I was there, we were doing watercolors, and that little painting is a watercolor, and that's a painting that's finished. There was a called the Sisters Project, and I think there's people connected with the Sisters Project here. And Donna Johnson was an artist, and she went blind, and she died, and she cancer, and she left 150 unfinished pieces, if I have that right. So I was invited to choose a couple of pieces, and those 2 pieces are the pieces that I finished of Donna's unfinished work. And I was drawn to the top piece, which was a house. Next to the painting is the piece that was Donna's. I was drawn to that piece because it's so connected to a wounding that I had when I was in that gifted artist program that kept me from going forward in arts. And what happened was I was drawing a picture, painting a picture of a barn, and I had the perspective wrong. And the professor came over and he said, the perspective's wrong, start over. And I would not start over. I just kept working on that same painting, trying to make it right. I did not want to start over. And he came over to me and he said, you've got talent, but you're too lazy. You'll never make it as an artist. Oh, and I heard that, So the place, and the reason that was so wounding to me was because when I was a younger kid, I was just a voracious reader, and so I would always stay up in bed, reading in the morning, and my mom would stand at the bottom of the stairs and sing, "Lazy Carolyn, will you get up?" So it was in my head. Well, you can see if you look at the green painting over there with the trees, the little tree painting, I finally got perspective. So I'm done with that part. But it took me a long time to get past that place of having in my head, I'm too lazy to make it as an artist. You know, it wasn't his fault, it wasn't my mom's fault, you know? And I learned since then that, yeah, you know, I can be lazy, we all can be lazy, we need that. But I've learned to see when I have trouble going forward or I set painting aside for a little while, that there's a place where it's patience and it's time for waiting, because all of my paintings really come through me in some kind of form of spirit. I just often feel like I'm just manning the brush and I have to listen and I have to wait. And so I've learned that, well, you know, I could interpret my laziness. It's just, I have to be patient and I have to be willing to wait. So when I got to be 64, you know, when you get to, that's like, I'm going to do it soon or I'm not going to be able to do it. And I had the support of Gary. He's back over in the corner there. My husband, my partner, I had his support all along. He would have supported, he did support me when I did some of those step in and step out times, when I was testing the water again as an adult. He supported me and I was able to close my practice and give over to painting. And so how I did that though, before I closed my practice, has to do with the second painting. And this was, I call this my discernment painting. It was the first painting that I did in earnest. It was actually done before these two paintings. I worked with a woman named Shiloh Sophia. It was all online. She's in California. She's a wonderful artist. Her work is mostly goddesses and Madonnas, and it's somewhat of folk art, but she's quite gifted. And she had, this painting probably has 10 or 12 layers on it. It was a whole year painting on one painting, layer after layer. And sometimes I really liked what I painted and I had to paint it over. So I worked with her for a year on this painting. And my prayer always was, you know, to know that when I'm done with this painting, am I going to let go totally of my old work and step in and say, yeah, I'm an artist. You know, I don't know how good I'm going to be. And, you know, I know my work's kind of different, but I'm going to do art and see what happens. And so when we finished the year, my painting wasn't done yet. It took me a whole nother year to finish it. But when I finished the painting, and if you look at this painting, there's the remnants of fallopian tubes and the remnants of the womb with the woman coming out of it. It's been painted over, but pieces of it still show through. And the phrase that came through, there were two phrases, and one of them, you can see it, it's called, "This birthing is a surrender to a new freedom." And it really truly was. And around the moon that, that's self-portrait of it, when I used to look like that, it kind of looked like that, was talking about the process of the new moon becoming and moving into the full moon, and then the waning stage of the moon. And it's a cycle that we go through over and over again. And the message that came to me was, you can't rush. No rushing is allowed. So that was the other message that I got. I need to be patient with my work and let it come. So I do. I want to say a little bit about the bottom piece, which was the second piece I did of Donna's. And I feel like the top piece is my beginning, it's the transformation. I allowed all the old that wasn't, you know, to take my care for defects, they all burned away, well, most of them. And then I have this new life, I have this new house. And the painting below it is called Manna for the Winter of Life. And I just feel like that painting, with the words and the wisdom that is leaking through, is how I feel about my life, that gifts continue to leak through from people that I meet and the interactions that I have, that I've come out of the place which is more comfortable for me, of being isolated and kind of not really a hermit, because I have way too many kids for that, but I could be, you know, and so I'm coming out more and meeting more people and really being more vulnerable and more intimate with people. And the gifts that I receive that feed the work that I'm then able to do is pretty immense. And that's my manna. So if you have a chance to look up close and you can see those words, that's going to carry me through into the winter of my life. Yeah, so when I start any painting, the very first thing that I do is I do some form of prayer writing. So sometimes it's actual writing, a painting out of a prayer. I will do it in handwriting with the brush. And sometimes it's just making a series of marks. Not too different than what you might see on some of the prehistoric painting walls or on some of the stone markings and the Celtic stonework. I will just mark. And each mark is a prayer and it has an intention. And then when and it's an intention about what the painting is going to be. So I always have an idea or something has come to me, usually waking up from a dream. I'm like, oh, this is the next piece I'm going to paint. And I will start that way. And then after those prayers are written down, and in many of the paintings, you'll see little remnants of the underneath layers showing through. And that's purposeful because we always show through parts of our old lives, no matter how much we've changed. It's always there. And then I will just start to put the layers on. And oftentimes what will happen is I'll get to a certain place in a painting and nothing is coming. I think I've been working on a piece for my sister Anita, and it's like nothing came for about 6 months. But one of the wonderful things about it, since I was doing this painting specifically for Anita, is that she came in one day and we wrote prayers together and painted together on the piece. So that will be underneath there always when that piece ever gets finished. I trust it will, you know.
No worries.
Yeah. So what else do I want to say? I want to talk about a couple of pieces. So I'm going to try to speak so you can hear me. But I'm going to point to, there are 2 pieces that are really connected with each other. The one that's called Cells in the Body of God. And the next one is the February moon painting. Those are paintings that I just want to talk about because somebody, like Beth mentioned, that painting about the cells in the body of God is a grief painting. And I was actually with my friend Vicki the day that the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas massacre happened on Valentine's Day, and it's 2018 when that was. I was with Vicki and I was, we had lunch together. We went to a show that was a whole day that was all about victims, survivors of sexual violence. So it was an intense day already. There was an art show, people, it was a juried show, and people who had been survivors and thrivers had submitted these incredible pieces. So I get in the car and I'm coming home and I turn the radio on and there's the news about that. And it just struck me in such a way. So came home and I just went to the studio and I started to paint. And the Cells in the Body of God really came because I had all this excess paint from the painting that I started, which is the painting that really represented all the people that were murdered. And it also represented the young man who did the murdering, because his whole life was lost as well in that process, and everyone who was grieving. And I had mixed up this red blood paint, and so after I painted the canvas black, because that's how I felt, things were just black, I couldn't see anything. And then I mixed up the blood paint, and when I painted the stripes, and the paint just pooled down at the bottom of the canvas and then on the easel. And I took that paint that was at the bottom and I got another canvas, which ended up being the Cells in the Body of God. I couldn't make any sense about the violence. I couldn't make any sense about why I so deeply was like impacted by this painting. And so I began to paint where I had just taken the excess paint and brushed it on that canvas, not knowing what I was going to do with it. The way that I resolved that grief is that I recognized that all of life is a cell in the body of God, my conception of God. And so we are all connected. And that painting, while I painted the February moon painting, so I should just give a little backstory. The February moon, the new moon was on that same day. And so I paint moon paintings, and a number of these paintings are moon cycle paintings. So I had started a painting, I was going to start a painting on that day. And the silver gray in the center of the painting represents the moon. So I had intended to start that painting that day. And that painting, which is really about the healing and the rebirth, without downplaying the grief and the horror of what had happened. But that painting I finished in a couple of days. The cells in the body of God took me much longer because again, the whole painting process was every stroke was a prayer. And yeah. I don't know what else I want to say about those two paintings. I just want to say a little bit about why I titled this The Ongoing Birthing of Spirit. And I feel like one of the things that's happened in my paintings, and these are mostly chronological, a little bit out of, these were more at the beginning, and these two paintings here are paintings that I painted in the last year or so. That I do feel like my skill is getting better. I'm taking classes at College Education. And yes, my childhood, what I wanted to go to college for was to go to art school, and I didn't get to do that. So I'm nourishing that wounded child, and I'm going to get my associate's degree. It could take forever, but class at a time. That dream will come true. I do notice that the depth of my paintings seems to be growing as I've been painting longer, and it seems to be not somewhat connected with having increased skills and a better understanding of color theory, but there's something that goes on that I really can't paint unless I feel that connection to that part of me that's bigger than myself, that I just have to call it the spirit with the capital S. And sometimes it feels like it's, the three in one God that doesn't have sex. As far as I know. And I can paint from that place. And while I have a meditation practice, when I'm in my studio, I'm in a totally different space. And the painting comes out differently when I'm in that space. I can't try and make things happen. So sometimes paintings sit for, they might sit for a year, sometimes more. And that's where it's really important that I got over that lazy identity. The last painting here, this is my most recent work. This is the Midwives Pain. It's a triptych. I was inspired to paint, and so this is a painting too that I painted one year, and then I just painted in 2020, the Midwives Pain, and I just painted these two pieces the two end pieces right before the show went up. In fact, I think I varnished them the day that we were putting them up. But I didn't know if they were going to be finished or not, and the agreement was I would bring the unfinished pieces and they would be hung. And I was detached. I was, whatever was. I was inspired to paint the Midwives Pain because my daughter was pregnant with her first son, and she now has her second one back there. Her birthing team sent out this wonderful pamphlet that had all these different positions that you could labor in. And one of them so looked like a conception of like the Virgin Mary, like Mary getting ready to give birth. And I was inspired because I thought, yeah, if there was a woman named Mary who was gonna, was traveling with her husband Joseph. Yeah, and they were in a town where they've never been before, but it was a tribal community. Yeah, the midwives would be there. You just know it. They would come and they would help because the word would go out. And then the community would come, and that's one of the side pieces. And they would bring everything that they could possibly need for this new baby. And, and what's Joseph's role? He stands in as that figure of guard and guardian and gives space for what needs to happen. And so those three pieces came together, but they took a long time. The midwives was done in just a couple of months. It came pretty quickly, but the two side pieces took quite a while. And I'm okay with that. That's a big growth piece for me. So I think I just want to end by just saying my wish, and I'm so grateful for you all coming just to see this work. It means so much to me. And you all know how you made my life become what it is so that I could finally make the changes I needed to make in order to be able to do this. But my wish is that, if you're wanting to make a change and you're wanting to hold a dream, or you have a sense that this is what I'm called to do, because I do feel like from the time I was a child, I was supposed to be an artist. And I couldn't say yes. And now I could say yes, but I didn't do it alone. I got help, a lot of help and encouragement, and people who believe in me when I couldn't in myself. I made some hard choices and changes because people were there to support me to do that. And I can now do what I want to do. This is when I was just getting ready to say, I think I'm gonna let go of my practice and give over to being an artist, because I had my studio was my therapy room, so I had my counseling room. Hey, let that go so I could paint. Someone said to me, someone in this room said, so what's your vision for when you will be an artist? And I said, because the St. Mark's has been doing shows here for like 12 years, I think. I said, my vision would be to have my own show at St. Mark's. Someone else told me, and then I'm going to stop, and I'll take some questions if you have any. Someone else told me, well, a lot of times when people get their vision, they stop, they don't go any further. So I've made really sure that I have a couple paintings that I've started, and I got some good clarity about the image that's for Anita. So I'm not stopping. But this really is a vision come to fruition for me. I don't take it lightly. It's a miracle. If anybody has a question, I'll take it. Yes, Joyce.
So when you first did the midwives painting, at that point, did you envision the side pieces, or did that come later?
No, in fact, if you look at the program, I did all three campuses at the same time. I started them all, and the prayer, was a prayer written under each one of those, individual to that specific part of the painting. Yeah, so they were all started, and it was just by everything's by grace of God that I was able to pretty much match the paintings, the edges, so that they feel like they could be one piece. Yeah. Yes.
I'm really taken by that spiritual DNA. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. Yeah. So the spiritual DNA is the blue and yellow painting that's down at the end. During my discernment process of whether I was going to give over to living a life as an artist, I really struggled with my confidence. So someone in this room said to me, well, I think you might want to write, I feel more confident every day. That's for, I don't know how long the decision was to write it, but I wrote at least 20 times every day. I feel more confident every day. I feel more confident every day. And that's what's painted. I did it with the acrylic pen. That's what's painted on that blue panel that has been attached to the other piece. And in the process of writing that out loud, I started to hear, I feel more confident, confide in. I heard the word confide. And then I heard the word confide in me. And that was my transformation of letting go of that low self-esteem and not feeling confident enough to paint. And then, so I started to write confide in me, and you will see that around the yellow markers. And then I filled in with the yellow paint, and it felt to me like that was DNA. So that is where the spiritual DNA came from. And it ties in with the cells in the body of God. We all have that. We all have that. And all of life has that in my mind.
Can you talk about the red and orange?
Oh, yes, I mean her. This was a painting that was really a very deeply personal painting for me. I was in therapy at the time. And of course, we always talk about childhood stuff, right? And I was just reflecting on how much in my life I felt like I was unable to make myself heard. And so I did some writing of prayers, some writing of experiences underneath that painting. And all around the painting, you would see that there are all phrases about my transition, about from not feeling heard, not hearing. There's little prayers around the outside of that, or statements about that. So the painting, for me, was like my imagination of what it's like inside your head, in the waves of hearing, and how it gets so distorted and convoluted, and that's how it turned out. It was very spontaneous painting, and this was also a quicker painting after I had got done doing all the underneath writing. I don't know what else to say about it, but thank you. Tanya.
I love your use of color, and particularly in these later ones, you kind of have a central color palette. What speaks to you to choose the color that you do for the subjects? How does that come about?
So one of the things that happened was I actually learned how to mix color. So, that was, that's from going to college with DuPage. They have some really wonderful teachers there. They should be paid much more than they are. And I do say, I feel a little guilty because now I'm, an older person. And so I get to go for half price tuition. It's very cool, but I know that there are some kids there who really need the half price tuition a lot more than I do. So I have a lot of gratitude for that. And I try to give back to students I know who are in need with helping out with some of their supplies. But I have learned more about mixing color, and I think that's really helped me. And so, but what I usually do is I open up my drawer that has all of my tubes of paint. And I just look at it for a while and I ask which one wants to come out. Now, when I do a moon painting, so the one with the sun, that's the July truth, which we're in right now, to love truth. The green one is a moon painting. RBG, Walks Truth, is a moon cycle painting, and No One Except Truth, the two women in the brown moon is a moon painting, and the last moon painting here is the February moon. So I I haven't painted all the moons, but each moon cycle has a color for me. So that will, if I'm gonna paint a moon cycle painting, I will start with that, the color that's represented by that moon. But otherwise, the paint kind of seems to speak what it wants.
But the concept of muse, do you have?
Yeah.
Is it changing?
I think I have come to know my muse now as spirit. Yeah. And I think spirit is maybe multifaceted, so some aspect of spirit shows up and sometimes in some in others. Tim,
How do you pick the size of the canvas?
well, I don't know that I have how I pick it. Sometimes the painting just feels like it needs to be really big. And then it is. And I know if it's a big painting, most of the time it's gonna take a while. And but I prefer to paint big. It's easier for me.
After you do your underpainting, and then you start on top, you chalk that in and then fill in the color?
Not usually, unless I'm doing a figure, and then because I still have trouble with the portions, you know, in my head, I will like mark lines so that I can have that as a reference point. Because otherwise I'm too close, you know, when I'm drawing, I'm too close to see it. So I usually just start with a thinner brush and a wet paper towel, so I can wash it away before it dries. Because my paintings are all in acrylic, so unless I use a retarder, it will dry pretty fast. So if I don't like the mark, my left hand hits the paper towel, I can wipe it off.
One other question, what color do you find hardest to mix?
I don't know. I don't know, maybe brown, you know. But I will tell you, there are so many amazing colors of brown that maybe when I really finally master that, I will come to like brown better.
Which painting was the most joyful for you to paint?
I think maybe the kitchen banana was really the most fun for me to paint. You know, I love to cook. I happen to be a really good cook without trying, and I recognize it's a gift. But I think the kitchen banana was the most fun.
Tell them the story of the kitchen banana.
Do we have time to do that? Yeah, just do really short. So in Eastern Europe, it was kind of a tradition that as a wedding gift, a woman would get a little statue or a plaque or a painting of what was called the kitchen Madonna. It was usually Mary with the child. I'm sure that it's, you know, it had its origins in Hestia and the goddess of the heart, but that would be a traditional gift. I didn't know anything about that, though there is a book called The Kitchen Madonna, a children's book. Gary's mom, we were moving her out of her house, and when we were cleaning her house out, there was this little plaque hanging on the kitchen wall that was so covered with grunge you couldn't see what it was. But you knew that there was something on there. We cleaned it off, and it was her kitchen Madonna that she'd gotten for a wedding present. And Gary's sisters didn't want it, and which I was happy for because I wanted that kitchen Madonna. So she's hanging in my kitchen now. And I always knew that I wanted to paint my own kitchen Madonna, that I wanted to know what she was gonna be for me. So the image there is a combination of Dolores Huarte, who was the activist with Cesar Chavez, and she's still alive and she's still very much an activist. And I wanted her to be there because she's about the people who make the food. And also then All right, I'm blanking on the name of Julia Childs. Right, and Julia Childs. So the face is a combination of those two women. And then the dress is my mom. That's going to be my mom's dress. And there's green apples for Eve, and there's a pomegranate for, you know, the Persephone story. And all the backs of the books are the books that really have influenced me both, well, in my own kitchening. So.
And the cake?
Oh, and the cake. No offense, George, but I've always thought that if women had been in charge of the Last Supper, there would have been wine and cake.
No offense taken. I would, we'll have cake tomorrow.
Yeah, and the one is really that we are all one. You know? Yes. So you have all been so patient.
Can I step out behind the camera and just, I have a question for you. So when you have some more paintings, will you have another show? Beautiful thing is looking from the camera and you look out at the church. And you see that the art just brings color and beauty and life. So thank you for blessing us and all the people who come here, you know, every day. They're
I know.
children and all ages come here and we get to see this, and not just for Sunday morning or afternoons, but
So
all
baptism today.
baptism today,
Weddings.
baptism tomorrow.
You know, how many Garys have this many people come through? Really,
But-
you know,
So you just are blessing people and
I hope so.
continue this.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will say when they put the paintings up, when Cecilia and Beth were putting the paintings up, I stood here and I could feel my body, like I was stepping outside of my body because it was too much to take in. You know, they look so different than when they're like in my little house or in people's houses. I really did have an out of body, it's like out of body, and I had to remind myself to breathe. And thankfully, you know, Cecilia and Beth are safe people, and I just said, I'm just having a hard time with taking this in. So it's getting easier. But thank you. Enjoy some food and